Derek never called. But I got a birthday card for our son with a $50 gift card to a toy store. No note, just a scribbled signature, and you know what? It didn't sting. Not anymore. Because something had shifted deep in my bones. I no longer needed closure from people who couldn't give it. I didn't need apologies to validate my pain. I didn't crave their recognition like I used to. I had built a life without them. Brick by quiet brick. And while regret might visit their dinner tables from time to time, it doesn't stay with me. Not anymore. Because regret, I've learned, never tastes good. Especially when you've already learned to feed yourself joy. It wasn't a holiday. There was no occasion, no formal invite, no dress code. Just a Saturday afternoon, the scent of cinnamon rolls filling my tiny kitchen, and a mismatched set of chairs dragged from every room in the apartment. My son, now 4, was busy arranging plastic dinosaurs around each plate, announcing proudly that the T-Rex would be in charge of dessert. His curls had grown longer, his voice more curious. He still asked questions faster than I could answer, and every time he called me Mama, it felt like the universe reaching back and saying, "You did okay." Around the table were faces that looked nothing like Derek's family. There was Talia, who'd launched her beta app 2 weeks ago, and was already getting downloads from special ed teachers across the country. There was Ms. Rima, my elderly neighbor, who used to knock on my door just to bring over soup when my baby was sick and I looked too pale to argue. There was Marcus, the quiet developer who mentored me remotely when I was afraid to even ask questions in coding forums. And there was Jonah, my best friend from college, who'd moved back to the city last year and didn't ask questions when I broke down on his couch at 2 a.m. after my first major crash and burn pitch. This was my family now, not by blood, but by battle. By the quiet wars we fought when no one else was looking. By how we chose to show up, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. The table was cluttered, no one matched. The food wasn't fancy, grilled cheese, soup, a pie that sank in the middle. But there was laughter. Loud, unfiltered, belly-deep laughter. And there was no pity, no judgment, just presence. At one point, Talia turned to me and said, "You know, when you told me your story, I didn't believe people like you were real." I blinked. People like me? I didn't plan to go back inside. But 2 days later, Heather texted me, "Hey, can we talk about the other night?" I stared at the message longer than I should have. Not because I didn't expect it, but because I did. They always come back, just never for the reasons you want. I ignored it. Then came Brenda. We were all a bit surprised. "You've done so well. Honestly, if you ever need help expanding, my husband knows investors." Investors, of course. Suddenly, I wasn't the cautionary tale anymore. I was a story worth attaching their name to. Funny how quickly pity turns into profit when the numbers are good. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat at my desk that night, the one I built with my own 2 hands, next to the worn-out baby monitor and the half-drunk coffee. My son was asleep, curled like a comma in his blanket, his breath steady, soft. He didn't know the storm I'd just walked out of. Didn't know that the same people who once mocked his existence now wanted in on the world I'd built for him. And I was torn. Part of me wanted to scream, to call them out publicly, to post the dinner story with screenshots, names, and receipts. But the other part, the part that had seen how fast online outrage fades, knew better. So instead, I did something quieter, more powerful. I invited someone else to dinner. Her name was Talia. She was one of my first clients, another single mom, juggling gigs while caring for 2 kids. We'd bonded over 3 a.m. emails and shared crash course resources. She had ideas, grit, and no safety net, and she was brilliant. We met at a diner, nothing fancy, just waffles, crayons, and bottomless coffee. We talked for hours, about motherhood, mental load, machine learning, burnout, and balance. She showed me sketches for an app she wanted to build, something for kids with learning disabilities. "I don't know," she said nervously. "I don't have your confidence." I smiled, sipping my coffee. Neither did I. But I had this fire in my chest I couldn't ignore. That's what you follow, not your fear. I offered her seed money. Not much, but enough to get her started. Enough to remind her that someone believed. Because that was all I'd ever needed. And while my old in-laws were busy circling like sharks around success, they didn't help create. I was already planting new gardens. Of course, the apologies still came. Heather sent a long email. It read like a press release, overly formal, full of "we didn't mean to" and "you know how families can be." So I opened the envelope. I unfolded the documents slowly, carefully, like they were sacred pages. I didn't speak, just laid out the contract on the table in front of me, letting the bold black headers speak for themselves. Treetop EdTech Partnership Agreement. $175,000 initial investment. Product owner, my full name. Heather leaned forward, squinting at the print. "Wait, is this?" I nodded. "It's my company. I built the app myself. It's being used in 3 preschools already. We're launching a pilot in 2 more next month." I looked up, meeting each of their eyes for the first time that night. "You wanted to know what I've been doing. This is it." The room fell silent. It wasn't an angry silence, or even a stunned one. It was the kind of silence that only exists in the few seconds before reality resets. The first to speak was Derek's uncle, the same one who'd patronized me moments ago. "Well, that's impressive," he said, clearly struggling to find neutral ground. "We didn't know." "Of course you didn't," I said, my voice steady. "You never asked." Brenda tried to mask her shock with a sip of wine, but her hand trembled slightly. Heather blinked, her mouth slightly parted, like her words had left without her. And me? I just sat there, stroking my son's back, letting the truth hang in the air like perfume. For once, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was done begging to be seen. Let them sit with it. Let them squirm in the silence they used to weaponize against me. "You think I'm just a mother," I said finally, "but being a mother is what made me this. Stronger, smarter, relentless." I stood, my chair barely making a sound as it scraped the hardwood. "I came here tonight out of respect, but I'm leaving with something far better." Heather stood, reaching for me awkwardly. "We didn't mean to." I shook my head. "You did, but it's okay. I forgive you for thinking so small." I almost believed it too. I walked out holding my son, the envelope still in my hand. I didn't look back, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. Not out of sadness, not out of anger, but out of the quiet, powerful knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't rage. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and making sure they see it. I had a business. I called my lawyer. Yes, I'd quietly found one through a friend of a friend, and we reviewed everything twice. I printed the signed documents, sealed them in an envelope, and tucked them away. Not because I wanted to flaunt it, but because part of me still needed to believe it was real. Still needed something tangible to hold on to when doubt came creeping at night. And yet, despite all that, I didn't post about it. I didn't announce it to the world. I didn't text Derek, didn't email Heather, didn't update my social profiles with a triumphant CEO title. I just kept going. Because real success doesn't always need to scream. Sometimes it just needs to be ready, waiting for the right moment. Like, say, a dinner. A dinner where everyone expected me to show up with nothing but a baby, a tired face, and the usual "I'm doing okay" smile. And instead, I showed up with the envelope. The one they didn't see coming. The one that would flip the entire room upside down. Because the envelope wasn't just paper, it was proof. Proof that I was no one's failure, no one's burden, and certainly no one's pity case. It was the quiet roar of a woman who never asked for applause, only underestimated. And finally, it was time they heard me. There was a moment of stillness, right after I laid the envelope on the table. You could hear the clink of someone's fork gently tapping their plate. The hum of a wine chiller from the kitchen, my son's quiet breathing against my chest. Then Heather spoke. Because of course she did. "So, what is it?" she asked with a tight smile, the kind that pretends to be curious but hopes for something laughable. "Just something I've been working on," I said softly, not looking at her. I ran my fingers over my son's hair instead. "That's a pretty envelope for something casual," Brenda added, cocking an eyebrow. "Did you get a new job?" I could feel their amusement rising again. They thought they were about to watch me squirm, thought I'd stammer out something small, something safe, maybe about a babysitting gig or a mom blog. They had no idea. I didn't plan to open it. I had no intention of making a scene. But something in me shifted when one of Derek's uncles leaned in and said, "Whatever it is, we're proud of you for trying, dear. Not everyone's cut out to be a provider." Trying. Not everyone's cut out. The words hit something ancient inside me. And I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't just surviving. I was building. Because there's something deeply revolutionary about a woman everyone gave up on quietly constructing an empire in the dark, in between milk bottles and midnight. I wasn't just a mother, I was a coder, a creator, a storm brewing in silence. And soon they were going to hear me thunder. They say success comes slowly, then all at once. For me it came on a Thursday, at 11:47 a.m. to be exact. My son had just gone down for his nap, one of those rare, glorious 2-hour stretches that feel like winning the parenting lottery. I was on the floor surrounded by coffee cups and colored post-it notes, reviewing the latest build of my app, Bubby Learn. It was still simple. 3 modules. Colors, sounds, shapes. Designed for kids under 5. Combing pastels, looping animations, real-life object associations. No loud music, no ads, just clean, intuitive interaction. But it wasn't just the aesthetics. What I'd created was a fusion of love and logic, of code written during colic fits and ideas brainstormed between spoon-feeding and meltdowns. It wasn't just a product, it was a digital love letter to my son. And apparently, someone else had noticed. The email came in from a business development manager at Treetop EdTech, a mid-sized but rapidly growing company known for acquiring promising educational platforms. I thought it was spam at first. "Hi Mira Klein. We came across your app and were extremely impressed. We'd love to schedule a call. There's potential here, and we believe you're onto something powerful. Are you open to discussing partnership or acquisition?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before reading it again, then a third time. Then I laughed. Loudly. Ugly. The kind of laugh that bursts out when disbelief collides with exhaustion. My son stirred in the next room, and I clapped my hand over my mouth, tears already falling. I said yes to the call. During that first Zoom meeting, I wore a clean shirt and lipstick for the first time in months. I balanced my laptop on a stack of books to hide the chaos behind me. My voice trembled, but my pitch didn't. I told them what I'd built, why I'd built it, who it was for. They listened. Really listened. 2 weeks later, I got the term sheet. 6 figures, upfront investment, and best of all, I retained 70% ownership. They didn't want to take it from me, they wanted to build it with me. That was when I knew. I didn't just have an app. And I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't just surviving, I was building. Because there's something deeply revolutionary about a woman everyone gave up on quietly constructing an empire in the dark, in between milk bottles and midnight. I wasn't just a mother. I was a coder, a creator, a storm brewing in silence. And soon they were going to hear me thunder. They say success comes slowly, then all at once. For me it came on a Thursday, at 11:47 a.m. to be exact. My son had just gone down for his nap, one of those rare, glorious, 2-hour stretches that feel like winning the parenting lottery. I was on the floor, surrounded by coffee cups and colored post-it notes, reviewing the latest build of my app, Bubby Learn. It was still simple. 3 modules. Colors, sounds, shapes. Designed for kids under 5. Calming pastels, looping animations, real-life object associations. No loud music, no ads, just clean, intuitive interaction. But it wasn't just the aesthetics. What I'd created was a fusion of love and logic, of code written during colic fits and ideas brainstormed between spoon-feeding and meltdowns. It wasn't just a product. It was a digital love letter to my son. And apparently someone else had noticed. The email came in from a business development manager at Treetop EdTech, a mid-sized but rapidly growing company known for acquiring promising educational platforms. I thought it was spam at first. "Hi Mira Klein, we came across your app and were extremely impressed. We'd love to schedule a call. There's potential here, and we believe you're onto something powerful. Are you open to discussing partnership or acquisition?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before reading it again. Then a third time. Then I laughed. Loudly. Ugly. The kind of laugh that bursts out when disbelief collides with exhaustion. My son stirred in the next room, and I clapped my hand over my mouth, tears already falling. I said yes to the call. During that first Zoom meeting, I wore a clean shirt and lipstick for the first time in months. I balanced my laptop on a stack of books to hide the chaos behind me. My voice trembled, but my pitch didn't. I told them what I'd built, why I'd built it, who it was for. They listened. Really listened. 2 weeks later, I got the term sheet. 6 figures. Upfront investment. And best of all, I retained 70% ownership. They didn't want to take it from me. They wanted to build it with me. That was when I knew I didn't just have an app. When you're covered in spit up, wearing a shirt that hasn't been washed in 3 days, typing with one hand while the other bounces a fussing baby strapped to your chest. Those first few months nearly broke me. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture. I believe that now. I once hallucinated my old boss's voice telling me to optimize an API while my son wailed at a frequency that could shatter glass. But I kept going, because I had to. I'd lay my son on a blanket beside me, prop open my laptop on a shoebox, and type with the kind of quiet desperation that comes from knowing no one's going to save you. I started freelancing on Upwork under my pseudonym. Nothing glamorous, landing pages for e-commerce sites, bug-fixing WordPress templates. Most gigs paid peanuts, but peanuts are still food when you're broke. Then, something odd happened. Clients started coming back. Loved your work? Can you do another one? You have a clean style. It was validation, not in the form of applause or praise, but in repeat business. In invoices that didn't bounce, in rent paid on time. I remember the first time I earned more than $500 in a week. I cried. Not because of the money, but because for the first time since Derek left, I didn't feel like a failure. I bought myself a real desk. It was cheap and secondhand, but I put it together during one of my son's longer naps and ran my hand across the surface like it was a throne. A queen of late-night hustle, crowned in sweatpants. My son grew. So did my codebase. One night while feeding him his bottle, I noticed how he kept staring at the ceiling fan. Mesmerized. I had an idea. What if I built something simple, an app for babies? Shapes, colors, soothing sounds, something calming, smart, responsive. Something that parents like me could trust and maybe even contribute to. So I started sketching. The app became my obsession. I'd test sounds based on which ones made my son calm down fastest. I'd tweak interface colors depending on what held his gaze longer. My baby wasn't just my reason to work, he was my user tester, my muse, my why. It was during these nights, half code, half lullabies, that I started to realize something important. People keep waiting for the world to give them permission. But motherhood had stripped away my need to ask. I didn't need a boss to promote me. I didn't need Derek to come back. I didn't need his family's approval. I needed my son to sleep. The family followed suit. Slowly, subtly, like leaves falling from a tree that pretends it's not dying. First it was his mother who stopped calling. Then his sister Heather, who removed me from the group chat. Finally, the wedding photos disappeared from their Instagram feeds, like I was some corrupted file they had to delete to preserve their perfect narrative. I remember sitting on the floor of my small apartment one night, cradling my growing belly, and whispering apologies to my baby. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had brought him into a world that already decided he was inconvenient. For a while, I disappeared. I stopped answering texts from old friends. I skipped baby showers and prenatal yoga. I avoided mirrors. But something strange happened in that silence. I started to hear myself again. I found my old laptop buried in a box from college. I remembered how I used to build websites for fun, how I once coded a calorie tracker in under 48 hours for a hackathon. I'd forgotten that girl. The one who used to build things. So I started building again. First, just tiny scripts, nothing major. Then, a small educational game to teach colors and shapes, inspired by a podcast I listened to while folding laundry. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post about it. I wasn't looking for likes or validation, I just wanted to do something that mattered. Freelance gigs came next, UX audits, front-end redesigns, all under a pseudonym, Mira Klein. No one knew it was me, that was the point. But while I was ghosting the world, I was also becoming something new. A mother who codes with one hand while rocking a cradle with the other. They thought I was fragile. They thought I broke when Derek left. What they didn't see, what they never saw, was that I wasn't broken. I was just building something better. And someday I promised myself I'd make them see it. Not for revenge, but because my son deserved to know that his mother was more than a punchline at someone else's dinner. I used to measure time by coffee spoons and meeting invites. Now, I measure it by feedings and diaper changes, by how long my son naps, by how quickly the bottle warms, by how many lines of code I can sneak in before he wakes up crying again. People talk about newborns like they're magical, and they are, but no one tells you how lonely the magic is at 2 a.m. Well, I guess it's good you have him, right? Brenda motioned to my son who had just fallen asleep in my lap. Babies are sweet, until they grow up without a dad. It was a whisper, barely audible, but it sliced through me like a knife. I looked down at my son, his soft curls damp with sweat, his tiny fingers still gripping mine. He didn't know what they were saying. Not yet, but one day he would, and that thought ignited something inside me. That's when I reached into my bag. I didn't say a word, I just pulled out the cream-colored envelope with the golden seal. The room noticed immediately. The shift in atmosphere was almost cinematic. I set it gently on the table in front of me, not opening it, just letting it sit there like a silent challenge. Someone, Brenda, probably leaned in. "What's that?" I smiled. Calm, cool. "You'll see," I said softly, stroking my son's hair. "Soon." Their laughter had already faded, replaced by curiosity, by confusion, and just a hint of something else. Fear, because in that one moment, I wasn't the poor single mom anymore. I was the woman with the envelope, and they had no idea what was inside. I wasn't always her, the woman they laughed at across the table, the one they reduced to a story about bad choices and a baby with no father. No, before all that, I was his wife. Or so I thought. His name was Derek, and to the world, he was a walking LinkedIn success story. Young, polished, with that effortless charisma that made you feel seen even when you were invisible. We met at a tech mixer, back when I still believed in dream jobs and glass ceilings that could be politely shattered. He made me laugh. Made me feel special. And when we got married 2 years later, the family welcomed me with rehearsed warmth and champagne toasts. I should have known it was all surface. I should have known I was a decoration in their curated lives. But love makes you stupid, and pregnancy makes you hopeful. When I told Derek I was pregnant, he didn't shout or throw things. He just went quiet. Really quiet. Then he said, "I don't think I can do this." "Do what?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Be a dad, be this person. I'm not ready. I need time to think." And then he left. Not in the dramatic slam the door kind of way, but in that hauntingly permanent kind of silence. No fights, no closure, just absence. He ghosted me, his own wife, his unborn child. I wasn't supposed to be there, not really. It was the kind of family dinner you only get invited to out of obligation, not affection. One of those long table events at a cousin's fancy suburban house, where the chandelier sparkles too hard and the conversation sparkles too little. Everyone was dressed like they'd just stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Perfect hair, perfect smiles, perfectly miserable. And there I was, with my 3-year-old son on my hip, and an overstuffed baby bag slung across my shoulder like a war-torn veteran dragging her armor. They greeted me with polite discomfort. "Oh, you made it," said Heather, my sister-in-law, with a tilt of her head that screamed, "But why, though?" Her tone was the kind that doesn't need translation. I saw it in the way she glanced down at my scuffed flats, in the way her manicured fingers barely touched my arm in a fake embrace. I knew this wasn't my table, but I came anyway. I came for my son. I wanted him to know that even if our world looked nothing like the polished dinners on TV, he still had a place, even if I had to carve it myself. We sat near the far end of the table, me trying to keep my toddler entertained with bits of bread and tiny cups of juice, while the others sipped wine and exchanged stories about their successful husbands, their Tesla leases, their nanny struggles. I stayed silent, like a quiet island in the middle of a loud sea. Then it began. "So, what's new with you?" That was Brenda, my ex-husband's cousin. She looked at me with that half-smile, half-pity expression people wear when they're fishing for gossip. "Oh, nothing too exciting," I said, offering the safest lie I could think of. I didn't owe them the truth. Not yet. "Still doing the stay-at-home mom thing?" asked someone else. Laughter bubbled under the question like venom beneath velvet. I nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Sort of. I'm working on something from home." "Blogging?" Heather asked. "Or like, crafting?" More laughter. It wasn't cruel in the obvious way, it was worse. It was the dismissive kind, the kind that doesn't even consider you worth mocking directly. They didn't know about the sleepless nights coding on my laptop while my son snored beside me. They didn't know about the hours I'd spent testing UX interfaces using cardboard mock-ups and crayons. They didn't know anything, and they didn't care to ask. Then someone said it,